Deltarune is really an amazing game, isn't it? Marvelous work, Mr. Toby Fox. Truly marvelous. I only have one point of criticism.
You're taking too long.
And honestly, that's a comparatively good gripe to have. I sincerely can't wait for Chapter 5 coming out sometime next year, but even without it, we have a ton of stuff to explore from the chapters we already have. Like, even just the stuff surrounding the night is incredibly interesting. Before we get into that though, I would like to make a quick congratulations to Undertale for 10 years of fun and determination. I can't believe it's been a whole decade.
10 years will give you such a crick in the neck!
I figured there's no better time for a video like this than the 10-year anniversary, right? With that out of the way though, let's get on to the video. Many of you probably know I have a theory on this channel that postulates that the Roaring Knight is Azriel. Today's video will be something of a pseudo part 2 to that video. There was a lot of stuff I missed from virtue of not having explored all of the game myself up to that point. Yeah, I know. How dare I make theories when I haven't even played all of it myself yet? I've got a whole lot of stuff going on in my life right now, guys. It's not bad stuff, just busy stuff. This channel very much included. It's time-consuming work at times, and researching, script writing, making thumbnails, and helping out with decision making during the editing process, it's all a lot. So, though it pains me to admit it, I hadn't actually done the S-rank room stuff or the Roaring Knight fight from start to finish myself until just a little while ago. Now that I have played it all though, that Azriel theory is really looking pretty good, especially due to the other major mystery character of Chapter 3. No, not that one. I'm talking about Eram. You see, now that I've actually gone through the sword route, I have a lot of parallels that need discussing regarding Eram and the Knight. First, let's start with this. A lot of people seem to think that Eram is the devil that Chris and Caddy tried to summon as kids, as mentioned by Susie in the church sequence, and potentially also described by this individual regarding a prophecy as to how the children chased the devil's tail into the forest. I can certainly see people's points on that. Eram is behind a door marked out with red devil horns, and they also summon Friend and use fire magic to attack you. That said, I don't personally see a whole lot of demonic imagery in the fight itself, and Raise Up Your Bat seems to point towards the possibility that the heart is the demon. The very first line says that when the demon heart is crying, blah 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 blah. The other parts do get brought up in the other sections of the game, including the devil's tail. The tail item seems to me to point to Jevil, who gives us the armor piece called the Jevil's Tail. And with the deal maker maybe being the eyes, I feel like the secret bosses may be building the demon piece by piece. And while it's possible that the Shadow Mantle is the body or the head or something, Eram doesn't really give us a shadow crystal after fighting him, we get it after fighting the Knight. So, maybe connected, may not be. From what I can see though, Eram definitely looks like a cape, and we are trying to get the Shadow Mantle here. If you look at it, the game's title in this section even appears to be Mantle. Perhaps Eram is just the Shadow Mantle itself? Possibly, but then again, Eram also says he has the mantle. It's not about getting him, it's about getting what he has. So there has to be more to it than just that. So then, what is Eram? Well, let's start by gaining some context clues. First, we know that the fight takes place in a dark world, so Eram is almost certainly either a light world object or part of a light world concept tied to an object. Since this particular dark world is in the Dreamer house, it must be something in that house. Notably though, Eram isn't just in the dark world, they are in the shelter of a video game section of the dark world. The game that we find Eram in is a very Zelda-like game. The movement, the mechanics, the stage design, and music is all very 2D Zelda-like. But that's not all. Not only are many assets in this section of the game designated with the word Zelda in their file names, Eram himself is also very similar to a Zelda enemy, the Pole's Voice. Pole's Voices are enemies in 2D Zelda games that look like a mix between rabbits and slimes. They have erratic movement patterns and can take a ridiculous number of hits in the first game. They are especially annoying enemies to encounter in groups. The Japanese version of the game lets you use a microphone on the Famicom to clear the entire room of them, but in the English version of the first game, they can be a real nightmare. Is looking like a Pole's voice really that notable though? Normally I'd venture to say no, but the fact that it looks like a Pole's voice is not only probably intentional, it's also not the only Pole's voice-like entity in these games. The Alphys-like lizard in this section moves and jumps somewhat similar to a Pole's voice as well, and with this being a Zelda-like section of the game, it's likely that this was intentional. More importantly though, there's a huge connection between Alphys, Eram, and the Pole's voice. The overworld amalgam sprite for memory head enemies in Undertale, also used as the default for amalgamates in the True Lab in general, features a Pole's voice in the negative space at the center right here. Okay, that's a little bit odd. What's going on here? Eram, memory head, Pole's voice? What does any of this even mean? Where does it all connect? Well, personally, I think that more than anything, this could show us what this item is in the light world. Memory head is a tech monster after all. Pole's voice is a Zelda-like entity, and Eram is the boss of this area. We all know already that this is a video game. Zelda is a video game.
You don't say.
Shocker, I know. I think that Eram and the rest of this place in the Dark World spawn off of a video game in the Light World as well. Truly groundbreaking information as well, I'm sure. But that said, I don't think that this game is spawned on the console in the living room. This game seems intentionally incomplete. The title screen lacks an actual title, there aren't any NPCs anywhere in the game. You might think that there are, and in a way I suppose technically there are since the NPCs are the players, but every character that shows up on Tenna's maps is a played character, one of the Dark Worlds with a controller in the back room. Point being, the game itself isn't finished. There is an unfinished game in the Dreamer House on Azriel's computer. If you check the computer in Chapter 2, you'll find that it has a folder titled Epic Game Stuff that features poorly drawn designs, including a final boss with rainbow wings. This was clearly an Undertale Easter egg, and it still probably is, but I think that the screens and games that we see in the Dark World are spawned off of this computer. Tenna made his adventure board maps based on Azriel's unfinished game. But shouldn't that game be Undertale? The game that we played doesn't seem to be Undertale, but if you actually look deeper, it still might be. There's a shutta in Chapter 3 with some very interesting dialogue. In the once upon a time, there was a land like purple cliffs, a frozen waste, watery basin, a metal desert, but this theater was built upon that and it grew. Purple cliffs, a frozen waste, a watery basin, and a metal desert line up extremely close to how Undertale takes place. The ruins being the purple cliffs, Snowden, the frozen waste, Waterfall, the watery basin, and Hotland being the hot desert. I mean, Hotland isn't exactly a desert, but it is a hot lava-y area, so I don't know, probably not a lot of water there. I'll give him a slide. Regardless, with this line from Shutta, it seems that it's quite likely that some major portion of the third chapter was created based on an Undertale-like game. And with what we saw on Azriel's computer, we know that there would have been a game like Undertale on there. That said, the version of the original game that we play is not very Undertale. Really, it's more like Deltarune itself, specifically the Weird Route. There are a lot of videos that discuss all of this, but essentially we kill and gain EXP, exploit a mage in a white robe to freeze a bunch of enemies, a bird, and then when she's all used up, we move on without her. I'm not going to get into the rest of it here, other videos do that better. That said though, it seems like there is a lot of things that point to this game being Deltarune and not Undertale. A lot of people mentioned on our Azriel Night theory that Azriel being the final boss twice in a row would be odd, but this makes it look like maybe it's still going to happen. If Deltarune is the game on the laptop and not Undertale, and the Rainbow Wing enemy boss is on that game, then it's probably going to be the case that the final boss will be an Azriel-like entity. Then again, it's also possible that this version of the game that we play is very, very different than the version that's actually on Azriel's laptop. After all, Deltarune itself is a game being built on Undertale, so this version of the game being Deltarune doesn't stop the version on Azriel's computer from just being Undertale. I just thought I'd bring it up here. That said though, there are some interesting things in the sword route of this game that we need to point out in regards to Azriel. For starters, the main enemies of the game that we play do look like the Dreamers. Ears on the side, horns up top, legs that could be like the pointed teeth of Toriel, Azriel, and Asgore. This one even throws red spears at us and is surrounded by yellow flowers that shoot bullets at you. The other enemies in this route that you kill are all monsters that exist in the light world like Alphys and Undyne, but the flowers could really only be referencing either something that we'll be seeing in Chapter 5 or beyond, or Flowey from Undertale, which, as we know, is Azriel. If we assume that this game is the one that was made by Azriel, then that means some very interesting things for us. There are 2 codes that we need to get and use in this chapter to open access to the Tenophyte. Those codes are 213 and 1225. The 213 code probably doesn't mean much for us yet, but both codes are parental codes, meant to keep Azriel and Chris from watching stuff that they aren't supposed to. Notably, however, the code 1225 is also probably the shelter code, or at least a part of it. If it is on Azriel's computer, then that would explain how Azriel and them got into the bunker as kids. And it would also explain why Chris doesn't want us to look into Azriel's room in Chapter 2, fearing that the code to the bunker could show up in there, when it instead shows up here on his personal computer. The code opens a door locked with a picture resembling the enemies of the sword route as well, so there is a clear link between the sword route of this game and this puzzle. So if Azriel made this computer game, it stands to reason that he made Eram as well, and once again, there's pretty clear evidence of this. I mentioned in the Azriel Night video that the Knight's song uses the drum track from Burn in Despair, the song that plays when fighting Azriel as the god of hyperdeath. It isn't the only song that does so. It's also used in the song that plays when fighting Eram, Burning Eyes. In addition to that, Eram attacks us with fire magic, a Dreamer staple, and you fight him after crossing a door with Chris's headband, bordering the frame, and the deltarune plastered on its front. What the deltarune means is kind of up for debate in Deltarune, but it is a clear reference to the angel at the very least. And while many assume that the heart is the angel, I very much disagree. As mentioned earlier, the heart is described in Raise Up Your Bat as a demon heart, literally the opposite of an angel heart. I think the heart is the demon, and therefore, Chris, as an unwilling participant, is also seen as the demon. The angel is Azriel, who, again, is named Azriel after an angel. The door here, notably one that grants access to the shelter key, could be a clue that the only ones with access to the deepest parts of the shelter at the moment are Chris and Azriel themselves. This all leaves us with the question of who Eram is. Eram is found deep within the shelter. They know Chris and taunt Chris with promises of fun or freedom. From an in-universe perspective, I think that Eram is a representation of what we will find in the shelter. From a meta perspective, however, Eram is one half of this chapter's secret boss. Eram spelled backwards is mare, making this chapter's secret boss Nightmare, or, if you prefer, Nightmare Knight. This idea isn't baseless either. Eram isn't actually named Eram. As a matter of fact, this entity is never given a name in-game. The song that plays while you talk to it is titled Eram, but in the game files, this entity is actually called Nightmare_Boss. This is extremely important for a big reason many of you are probably already aware of, but one that I'll hold off on discussing until a little bit later. For now though, know that in-universe Eram is likely intended to be a nightmare, one about whatever happened in the shelter. If we go based on the idea that Gaster was doing some kind of True Lab-esque shenanigans, something that we discussed in our first Deltarune video if you haven't seen that yet, then it would make sense that Eram takes on an appearance similar to Memory Head's overworld sprite. Memory Head is an amalgamate in Undertale that doesn't seem to fit in with the rest. It doesn't appear like any of the monsters that we know. It's instead a mess of a phone cord down there, presumably old data, and heads taking on the shape of a skull. If you call it with your own phone, you can hear it tell you to join in the fun, and a message will pop up that, quote, nobody came. Memory Head has memories of the genocide route, an insistence on having fun, and is made up of many individuals, one of which being a character that looks very much like a Pole's voice. I think that more than any other character aside from maybe the Knight and Gaster, Memory Head is the most closely related character to Eram. And Eram is found in the shelter, a place where we assume Gaster did his determination experiments in Deltarune, just like Memory Head is in the True Lab, where Undertale's determination experiments took place. I think that Eram and maybe the Shadow Crystal holders in general are the opposite of the amalgamates. They are the shattered pieces of a terrible creature. Except for Gerson. He got his shard on his own terms. Gerson aside though, I think that you guys already know where I'm going with this. It's obviously Gaster. The Knight has Gaster's hold hands, and if Jevil is the tail, Spamton the eyes, our heart the devil's soul, it seems as though every character with a connection to Gaster has a connection to the Shadow Crystals as well, even beyond the secret bosses. Sham drops the famous dark, darker yet darker line, and we, the soul, likely have a dialogue with Gaster before the story begins. Whether it is by owning the crystals or by seeking them out, the crystals seem to lead to him. Perhaps the secret bosses were given pieces of Gaster's shattered form, which tainted and twisted them not just into evil acts, but into becoming the parts of Gaster that he can use to recreate a vessel for himself, for his soul. That's why he calls Spamton on the phone and talks to Jevil. That's why he talks to the soul about finding a vessel. Why freedom is so important to this game. But as Chris is the cage, he's keeping the soul bound for the time being. And if that is the case, then perhaps Eram is Gaster's head or body or something. I don't know. But one thing that I do know is that Eram is going to be very, very important. Not only is he found in the shelter, he is also a nightmare. And keen fans know that Deltarune itself is a story based on a dream that Toby Fox had while he was in school. What that dream was, we don't really know, but Eram is titled the Nightmare Boss for a reason. Maybe that dream was about Toby being chased by a Pole's voice. I don't know, might sound crazy, but then again, I had a dream that my grandma's greyhound ate me and turned me into a slice of American cheese.
That's beautiful. In a really weird way.
So yeah, nightmares can be weird. Not sure why Toby would need to make an entire game about that, but I don't know, I'm not Toby. The similarities between Eram and a Pole's voice probably mean nothing, but Eram being a nightmare is very certainly important. Let's get back to what all of this means for Azriel Knight theory. The evidence in this video points to the idea that this Dark World was based on a world made by Azriel himself. We can see that the computer files likely had a code in there, and that the game has a cybernetic representation of a city, possibly connecting it to Chapter 2, and that it also has the shelter in it, a place that few others have actually gone into. Azriel made the game, and that's probably just a fact. It doesn't necessarily mean that he made everything in the game as we see it, but it is possible that it's extremely similar. Much of the game features you killing representations of Alphys, Undyne, Asgore, and at least 2 other Dreamers, in addition to the golden flower that shoots bullets, potentially representing Azriel himself. It seems that Eram wants you to go down the weird route, to have fun for some reason. I have a feeling that fun might be an acronym here, but I don't know what that acronym could mean. Maybe freedom something something? I'm not sure. Eram uses fire magic though, has teeth similar to the Dreamers, and so maybe there's a deeper connection between Eram and the Dreamers. All that said, what does any of this actually mean in the end? I'm not really sure. It seems like Azriel made a game, has the shelter code, and knows what's in the shelter. Eram seems to be connected to Nightmares, Memory Head, Pole's voice, maybe, and the Dreamers. Eram is also possibly part of Gaster's shattered form or some other devil that is associated with the shelter somehow, just like the other secret bosses. And all of this means something. I'll be honest, guys, I'm not really sure what to conclude about any of this. I've gotten a lot of evidence here that I feel like most other people haven't mentioned or looked at, stuff that nobody else seems to have noticed, like the game being made by Azriel and Eram being on Memory Head. But I don't really have a good conclusion for what any of it means. Maybe Eram is like a phone? Other than the Memory Head connection and a Spamton/Night connection found through light motifs, I don't really feel like we have enough evidence to suggest that they're the phone. And I haven't even talked about Friend yet. Dang it. Friend has a Spamton connection as well, as seen here. They are also likely an amalgamate that can be split up into shattered smaller parts, as seen by this scene showing him as a cat-like endogeny. Incatony? And the other ones in the Eram fight being smaller, singular cat-like entities. They also probably have a connection to Sham and therefore Jevil, as Sham is missing eyes and teeth, which Friend is made up of, and Jevil and Sham used to be friends before an entity coerced Jevil to leave and become obsessed with freedom. The connection is especially strong with Sham though, as both Sham and Friend seem to combine to become the Cheshire Cat, a grinning cat from Alice in Wonderland, a story that Chapter 1 drew on a lot of inspiration for. So, what does Friend mean in all of this? Again, no idea. I really don't know what most of this means, but one thing that I do think is that maybe people are viewing one of Deltarune's main themes a little bit crookedly. A lot of people postulate that dark worlds are a metaphor for escapism, and in a way I think that's true. But more accurately, I think that the dark worlds are representative not of the stories that we read, or the stories that we watch or play, but the ones that we create ourselves. They're not fantasy epics, they're fantasies that we create for ourselves to escape the harsh reality in front of us. The distinction here, I think, is that Deltarune isn't cautioning us about consuming media as much as it is cautioning us about wanting a better world instead of making the world better. A dream can quickly turn into a nightmare. As a person thinks about a better world, a better life than the one that they have, they are saddened, hurt, and sometimes left with a feeling of powerlessness, an inability to act or choose the world they dream of. A dream is a good thing to have, but a terrible thing to be beholden to. I think that Deltarune is telling us to live in the moment, by pushing past our dreams of what the world could be, and instead enjoying the world that we have now, using the freedom that we have to carve a path, not to a dramatically better dreamlike world, but to a world that we forge with our own making, a world that we can enjoy because it's one we made. Don't give your freedom away dreaming of something different. Use your freedom to make a world that you want to be in. In short, a dream can become a nightmare, but you are always in control. Look at your life with a mind to see what's behind your assumptions regarding the way the world is, because the world is far from perfect, but worrying about that only gets you down. Rather than looking for a dream world, just look for a path you didn't see before. You'll find yourself moving to a better world in no time. Alright, that's gonna do it for today's video. Big thanks to our channel member Berber0555 and to all of our subscribers. I hope that everyone enjoyed today's video. It was a little bit of a struggle on the script writing side, but I think it came out alright in the end. I'm still not quite sure what it all means for the plot, but I think that's okay. I can wait a little longer. Quick reminder to hit the hype button, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you're having trouble finding or using the hype button, we have a dedicated video on that topic that I'll link right here. Regardless though, if you press the hype button or not, thanks for commenting, liking, subscribing, and hey, even just watching. It really does mean a lot. One quick final announcement for all of you Outcast Penguin fans out there, we are going to be at FanX this year, so if you'd like the chance to meet one of your more niche creators and you're also going to be in Salt Lake near that time, make sure to join our Discord channel linked in the description so that we can keep into contact with you on what time and place to meet up. I hope to see you next time, but until then, this is Outcast Penguin signing off.